The Philadelphia Phillies are hitting a bit of turmoil for the first time all season, and the pressure is on Dave Dombrowski. With less than a week until the MLB trade deadline, the pressure is on to improve this team to the true World Series champions they desire to be, and they've been connected to names like Garrett Crochet and Jack Flaherty, who could be the missing pieces. We're going to break down in this video what that means for this team, what it would take to get those types of assets, and everything else that you need to know as it pertains to this Phillies team. But before we dive fully into it, I do want to make sure that you guys are smashing that subscribe button. That at this point in time, 91.9% of you guys viewing this videos have not subscribed to the channel just yet. We got to get that Phillies Digest family growing. There is plenty of baseball still to be played. So let's dive right into things. Luke Arcaini, how are we doing, and what are you thinking about these potential rumors?
Yeah, it's been a bit of a rut, I'd say, the last, week and a half. The offense, everything's not really going great, but that is, once again, the beauty of baseball, like we've talked about multiple times. But there was a big report yesterday from Dombrowski from MLB Network about the Phillies' interest in one of probably the two biggest starters on the market in Jack Flaherty and Garrett Crochet. Really specifically a Crochet package to a White Sox team right now that the Phillies have been heavily linked to already with the Luis Robert deal that we've already talked about. So he basically said the Phillies are looking at rotation upgrades, which, if you think about it, wasn't necessarily, I don't think, anybody's first thought with the upgrades at this deadline. I think right now the big needs have been that outfield bat and maybe some bullpen pitching. But I think right now the Phillies are kind of looking at to possibly go all in. For a guy like Crochet, just has been absolutely awesome this year for the White Sox. An ERA just above 3, 111 innings, WHIP under 1, 157 strikeouts already. It's just been an absolute monster for a really bad Chicago team. And I know we're going to sort of dive into the package. I think it's going to get pretty hefty if the Phillies truly are interested. But he's definitely a name that is at least considered looking in at the package for, because he's been one hell of an arm this year for the Phillies.
Yes, 100%. I do want to dive a little bit deeper into kind of the concept of the outfield versus pitching arm. But as you mentioned, to add a little bit more fuel to the fire here, we did have a report saying that the White Sox had taken some trips to the Phillies minor leagues team to scout out a little bit, so a little bit more fuel on the fire. And as you mentioned, he has been absolutely terrific. The stats in 21 games this year: 111.1 innings pitched, just 10 home runs allowed, 157 strikeouts, and just 83 hits. Really impressive stuff right there. The ERA just over 3 at 3.07. He's still just 25 years old, so not a guy that is near the tail end of his career by any means. This could be a potential move in which he could become a long-term piece of this Phillies team. So before I dive deeper into kind of this outfield versus pitcher conversation, how high would you gauge him as far as what would he change the meter for this team? And in particular, in comparison to this Phillies rotation, where do you think he fits in? Does he take over the Christopher Sanchez role? Is he better than that? I know Taijuan Walker has been a big disappointment and a bit of a lost cause at this point. So where does he fit into this rotation as a whole?
Yeah, so there's one sort of issue right now with Crochet, is that he's hit double his innings limit from his career. He's thrown more innings this season than he has through the first 3 years of his career combined. So the gauge around the league right now is leading us to believe that he is going to turn into a reliever for the end of this year. So if the Phillies were to try and acquire him, I think their hope is that he would possibly pitch out of the bullpen this season. I think it's a guy that they could turn into maybe a high leverage lefty out of the bullpen. But it doesn't seem like whatever team he is going to go to, I don't believe he's going to start there. Once again, he has 184 career innings in all of Major League Baseball. 111 of them have been this season. So I don't see him staying in any rotation much longer this year. So if the Phillies were to sort of throw this package at him, they're sort of throwing a package at a reliever for this year, and then next year maybe a starter. But as of right now, for this season, I believe he is going to be a reliever. Yeah.
Okay, interesting stuff there. And as far as the reliever versus starter conversation, I personally lean towards reliever being a bigger need. That we know that there are the two aces in Aaron Nola and Zack Wheeler, that it doesn't get much better than that as far as the top end rotation and guys that have proven it on the big stages. Then you add in a guy like Ranger Suarez, who is just straight up, you cannot speed him up. He is as cool, calm, and collected as it gets on the mound, and a guy who you essentially can pitch around in certain situations when you look at like how they pitch things in the playoffs before, whether it was out of the bullpen as a starter. He can do a bit of whatever this team needs. And Christopher Sanchez, I'm buying into what he's selling this season, that I do believe. So for me, that's enough from the starting rotation standpoint. I do think in the bullpen, it's a little bit more concerning that we're seeing Jose Alvarado be a little bit more sporadic lately. Matt Strahm still been excellent. Jeff Hoffman still I trust with my whole heart there. But beyond that, I do have some questions. So do you think that reliever is a bigger need than the starting pitching?
Right now, I do. Yeah. I think once you get to the postseason, you really only use four starters. And if Ranger is still good to go, like listen, I don't think Ranger is going to be early season Ranger anymore. I think the arm's a little dead. But if I think they start to sort of pull back the innings a little bit, I think he'll still be a valuable starter in October. But I think the bullpen's a bigger need. And how worth it is it to trade all of that? Which, I mean, the package for a Garrett Crochet is going to be pretty hefty.
Yeah.
It could turn into one of Andrew Painter, Aiden Miller sort of thing. I think it would probably be Andrew Painter. I think the White Sox are going to ask for Aiden Miller. I don't necessarily think the Phillies would do that just for Crochet. But I think the White Sox are at least going to ask. So, I mean, I think it would have to be at least one of those two guys along with some other prospects. And I think for me, the Phillies' thought needs to be how much better is he than a guy like a Tanner Scott, right? Is it worth going for a Tanner Scott who wouldn't cost you as much and is still a really awesome left-handed reliever out of Miami? So it's going to be just gauging the market. And honestly, I think that's what they're doing by sort of checking in with the White Sox right now. I still think they're in on the Luis Robert thing. But I think right now the whole Crochet Flaherty thing is really just kind of gauging the market because the market really only gets worse every year for pitchers. So right now I think it's just sort of they want to check in, just like make sure like where everything's at. I don't think they're going to sell everything for Crochet, but I do still think that he is in the cards as of right now.
Yeah, and particularly with the expanded playoff format, one of the things that has jumped out to me as an effect of that is there's just simply not as many sellers as there once was in the MLB. So that drives the price up for everybody all around. And to add to the conversation about this Phillies team and how good the starters have been, we're talking about Zack Wheeler with a 10-4 record, a 2.7 ERA, and a 0.99 WHIP. Ranger Suarez and Aaron Nola, Nola with an 11-4 record and 3.54 ERA, 1.04 WHIP. Ranger Suarez 10-4, three pitchers with 10 wins. They were the first team in MLB baseball to achieve that, and I believe still the first team to have three pitchers with wins, if I'm not mistaken there. Suarez ERA sitting at 2.87, certainly has slipped a little bit from what he was at the start of the year, but it's tough to maintain just how great he has been, and I still have confidence of him when the moment will matter most. And then Christopher Sanchez, while he's 7-5, he's pitched much better than that number indicates. A 2.97 ERA, 1.24 WHIP, and then to add in Wheeler with 2.8, Suarez with 2.8, Nola with 1.9, and Sanchez with 2.0 have produced a combined WAR of 9.5. So that is just pretty ridiculous stuff from a pitching staff right there. I know it is a little bit of bracing for luck. I guess I'll ask you the question about Ranger real quick is what's your level of confidence that he can get back to at least close to what he looked like at the start of the season, or is that a concern for you?
Yeah, so I think Ranger Suarez first half of the year was a mix of he's a good pitcher and also just riding a little bit of a high. I don't think the guy we saw with an ERA under 1 is who Ranger is. I think Ranger's still more of a number 3. I think what we saw in the beginning of the year was very promising because we know when he's at his best, then he's arguably one of the best in the game. I just don't think he's found the 100% consistency yet to do it over a full season. I still think he's a great arm. I don't think he's going anywhere anytime soon. But I do have some confidence. I think the arm's just a little dead right now. I think this inning limit, I think they're gonna implement very soon. I think they're gonna try and just maybe sort of limit a little bit of the innings every 5 days. And not necessarily have him out there for 100 pitches every night. But I don't really have much concern with Ranger. I think his last start was really promising compared to the last 5 or 6 before that. So there's not really much concern with Ranger. I think just a little bit of a dead arm right now.
Okay, and my last question for you, Luke. So when diving into Garrett Crochet once again, we know he plays for the White Sox. There has been this noise attached to Luis Robert Jr. as well. My question for you, if the Phillies take this big swing and manage to pull off a blockbuster deal, bring in Crochet and Luis Robert, even if that means bringing in or trading away Crawford, Miller, you're sending the bag for this type of package. Do you think that wins the Phillies a World Series, and in your mind, is that worth it?
Yeah, I do think it would win them a World Series. I think it's probably the best pitcher available and one of the best bats available. I still don't think they do it.
Wow.
I just think the package is going to be absolutely absurd for that. I mean, that's top 6 prospects probably going, at least. So it's just a matter of if Dave and this front office wants to really sell everything. I think there's a difference between going all in and just throwing everything in. I don't necessarily know if they're going to do that huge of a package, but I wouldn't be surprised if at least one of those guys is here come August 1st.
Okay, well, I do hope that is the case. And personally, if you think that wins you a World Series, you pull the trigger 10 times out of 10 in my mind. That I understand you're mortgaging the future, but in my mind, you only get so many attempts at this, and you never know how long that window can be open. It's quite clearly open for them this year. So if that is how things play out, I do hope it is the case for this Phillies team. But we will have plenty more to break down right here on Phillies Digest. Once again, make sure you're smashing that subscribe button if you have not already. We got plenty more before the heading up until the trade deadline, plenty of news to break down, and as well as the final run for this Phillies team. So make sure to hit that subscribe button, drop a like on this video, any comments you have below, and we'll be back talking to you next time right here on Phillies Digest. Peace.